As you know, for the last 3 years with Mayor Duggan, we've had obviously a strong emphasis on the neighborhoods of the city of Detroit. Not just downtown and midtown, but Corktown, Rivertown, New Center, West Village, East English Village, Brightmoor, and others. And so for the last 3 years, we've really spent a lot of time fighting blight, demolishing homes, auctioning houses, fixing illegal dump sites, improving response times, turning on the streetlights, etc. Generally improving the quality of life in our neighborhoods, which is really where the soul of the city is. And so today, we're here to talk about property tax assessments, which is something that's been an issue of concern for Detroiters for a long period of time. And I think we got some good news. And so I'm going to start with our mayor, Mayor Mike Duggan. Mike?
Hey, Mike.
All right. Well, today is another a major step forward for the city of Detroit becoming a professionally run city. And I want to congratulate the Chief Financial Officer, John Hill, the City Assessor, Alvin Horn, and everybody in the assessment department on the completion of this remarkable 3-year effort. For the first time in 60 years, all 255,000 of the residential parcels in the city of Detroit have been individually assessed. For years, we basically taken entire neighborhoods or sections of the city and taken averages, which is the best that could be done with the data available. But this came out of the original plan of adjustment where we said everybody ought to know that their house was looked at. And so our team started with high-resolution aerial images. We had airplanes fly over the city taking high-resolution pictures both in 2014 and 2016 of every single house in the city. Then we took street-level images, and we had cars with 5 cameras on them driving up and down the blocks, so you got good shots from the street level. And in cases where we didn't have good enough shots either from the air or from the street, we went out and did field visits. It's been a 3-year process, and today we will be sending out the assessment notices, and everybody will get an assessment based upon their individual houses. Now, the interesting thing is, in the last 3 years, basically what we've done is by taking geographic areas and cutting assessments by average, 5, 10, 20% the last 3 years. Everybody assumed, at least they did in preparing the plan of adjustment, that when you cut the assessments, the city tax revenues would go down. In fact, just the opposite is the case. Turns out that when people feel they're being assessed fairly, they pay their taxes. And we went from 68% who were paying their taxes in 2012 to 79% last year to 82% we believe are current this year. And we expect that number to continue to trend upwards. The interesting thing is we didn't know how this was going to come out because the last 3 years the assessors in making the cuts geographically did the best they could, and so we didn't know we were going to be really high or really low, and I was pleased to see what the results were. So 53% of Detroiters are going to see a reduction in assessments of less than 10%, and 41% are going to see increases in assessments of less than 10%. So 94% of the parcels in the city were already assessed within 10% of the value done on this parcel-by-parcel analysis, which makes me very impressed with the job the assessment department has done in past years. Because of the effect of Proposal A, your increases can only go up with the rate of inflation, which means those who are seeing a cut will see an average cut of $263. Those who are seeing an increase will only see an average increase of $80. So their property values grew a lot faster than that, but Proposal A only lets your taxes go up at the rate of inflation, which was about 1.5%. So the good news for the city is property values are going up in many of these areas, and even the better news is as long as you keep your house, your property taxes are not going up with them. So what the residents of our city will see this week is an assessment notice. And on the assessment notice, there's a line and we circled it in red in your packets, that shows you your tax bill, how much it went up or down. You don't pay off this. This is just the notice. The actual bill will come out around June, but this will give you an idea of where you go, and we will have details if you think it is incorrect, how you go about appealing it. There are also a number of exemptions that we want the public to be aware of, and we hope that the media will help us publicize those. And to explain those exemptions, I'd like to turn it over to the President Pro Tem of the City Council, Councilman George Cushingberry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I noticed that a lot of you have been reporting on the idea of assessments. And one of the things that we've learned in the 3 years that we've been here is that many people qualify for the total exemption of property taxes. If you make below the federal poverty line and you fill out the paperwork, we call it a poverty exemption for short, but the paperwork is available that you can be totally exempt from that year's taxes if you fill the forms out. So poor people needn't pay taxes if they simply fill the form out. That's why my number one crusade, and Mike, you know I always say this, you got to read to succeed. To get what you need, you got to read. Part of what we've got to do in Detroit, it's a failure of all of ours, including the media, the government, everybody has failed with encouraging people to read. We've got to encourage people to read those documents. If you are a veteran, you need not pay property taxes in the city of Detroit or anywhere else in Michigan, but you got to fill out the form. You got to fill out the veterans form. You must fill out the form. If you don't fill out the form, you can't get the exemption. Those are the two that we really want to highlight, at least I do, because poor people need not be afraid. You don't have to pay property taxes. Mr. Donwell and his crew are very good at helping you. So please fill out the forms. Finally, the Board of Review will be starting shortly, where you can appeal your assessment. For those of you who think that the increase in the value does not meet the market, because we have to follow the Michigan Constitution, which says 50% true cash value. If you don't think that the assessment that you receive is truly 50% of true cash value, you can appeal to our Board of Review. Again, the form is online. The forms for all of these are online through Michigan.gov State Treasurer forms. You also now can get them also by coming to the city's website and going to assessment. Please fill out the forms. We don't want anybody to have to pay taxes that should not be paying them, and most of all, we don't want anybody to lose their home. That has been a crusade from day one when we discovered how many people were finding themselves in trouble. I have to give it to our new county treasurer, Eric Sabri. He's been the genesis behind a lot of good stuff that's happened to help, and of course the mayor's lobbying efforts to change the way that people could pay them back and to get into payment plans. But going forward, again, please help us get this message out. We have not gotten the message out that people don't have to pay property taxes if they make less than the poverty guidelines. Thank you. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Councilman President Pro Tem. Appreciate those comments. To explain this very fascinating process of reappraisal and reassessment, I think you're going to find it very interesting. I'm going to bring up the Deputy CFO, Alvin Horn. Alvin, come on up.
Well, for the reappraisal, first thing to say is we hired a company called Photometry, and that's the company that conducted the aerial imagery. Along with Photometry, we hired a company called iLookAbout, and they did the street level imagery. In addition to that, we digitized all of the city's field cards. So what we did is we compared the images on those field cards to the aerial and the street level imagery. Where everything matched up fine, where there was a difference, we sent people out to look. And before I go much further, the city had a reappraisal vendor. We did a bid out. We hired a company called Tyler Technology out of Moran, Ohio. And they're the ones who did the majority of the work. They're the ones who conducted the reappraisal for the city. It is an ongoing process. The residential portion is completed, and that's the residential portion is more or less completed. We've received permission from the State Tax Commission to keep moving forward, which had the practical effect of we can use the 17 values on the assessment roll. We're still working on the commercial and industrial portions. So as I said, we digitized the field cards. We used the imagery from both the street level and from the aerial images. We compared the three of them together. Where there was a difference, we sent people out to that location to pick up the building attributes. Where everything matched up, and for the most part it did match up, we just kept going. There were some areas to say that where we did send people out to do field reviews, some of the more unique properties, some of the more distressed properties where the imagery didn't match up. But for the most part, this was done at a desktop review. Once the imagery and everything lined up, once we had the building attributes together, we created the economic condition factors, which literally are neighborhoods. We've divided the city into about 270 plus neighborhoods, where the homes are pretty much the same, where the factors, where the neighborhood groupings are the same. That's how we're supposed to value property, and that's something we hadn't been able to do in the past. So what appears on the assessment roll this year is market data. Is based on sales that we've gotten from the Wayne County Register of Deeds office, property transfer affidavits that come into our office, but it's also based on the actual attributes of the buildings themselves, and that's something we hadn't updated in years. So as the mayor mentioned, for the very first time since I've been here, the assessment notices that go out there this week are based on market value.
Thanks, Alvin. As I mentioned, we're not going to admonish you, but there will be a quiz of what Alvin just talked about here, so be ready. You know, the true test of all of these things certainly is how the residents and Detroiters really feel about these kinds of changes. And we've been talking about property tax assessments for a long time in this city. And if you recall, the Marygrove neighborhood was one of the first neighborhoods we went into where the mayor said, let's start there with our demolition, fighting blight, et cetera. And so we went and found a resident from Marygrove. Matter of fact, she's a longtime retired city worker, and we were glad to find her to kind of share with you what her experience has been with this latest change in the reassessment values. Let me bring up Miss Maggie Williams. Miss Williams, come on up. Tell us how things are going in Marygrove.
Hi, I'm Maggie Williams Hinton. We bought our home there 1967, so I've been there 50 years, so we know a lot of residents, and we know beautiful homes, hardwood floors, beautiful constructed, well-built homes. And even today, my house is really well built. I appreciate my home. I raised my family there, I raised my grandkids there, and I am proud of the neighborhood. I'm proud to say that I live in the Marygrove area. It's a beautiful area. Anything else you need to know about the homes? They're well built and sturdy. And as far as the taxes, nobody likes to see their taxes go up. But if you look at what people are looking at in buying homes today, we have people that has moved to the suburbs, and they are moving back in. I think 25% has already moved back into the area because they like the houses well built, bringing up families, and it's a beautiful neighborhood. I don't have a picture of it, but I'm very proud to say, and I'm proud to be a homeowner for over 50 years. And I bought the house during the 67 riot. And when they took me around the area to see the houses in the house that I bought, it's just, it's just absolutely gorgeous. And today, to go through that area, you would say the same thing. I appreciate it.
Have you felt that your property taxes were higher than they should be because of decline in some of the nearby areas?
Well, this is the way I feel about that, is that nobody likes to see their property tax go up. But when you feel that the neighborhood is being secure and stable, you don't mind paying an extra, $100 or whatever for taxes. Because if you don't, look at it and value your houses at that, the property value is going to go down for long term. It doesn't hurt for the, it doesn't hurt because people know what they can spend on the taxes. They don't mind doing it if they get in a good neighborhood.
Ms.
And
Williams,
that makes.
tell them about the folks that you've had moving into your neighborhood recently.
Yes, we had somebody from Canada, a young family, bringing up a little baby, and they moved in. They're on the corner right across the street from me. And down the street, it looks, my kids, when they were small, they used to call it the castle because it was such a beautiful house and it was made different than most of the houses around there. And so they moved in. When the people moved out, we had some residents to move back in there, and it's just a beautiful, and I just invite anyone to go back to that neighborhood to see how beautiful it is, and you would see a good neighborhood, very good neighborhood. And actually, when they start fixing up the houses that the people did not take care of, then, that made a big difference also. So it's getting back to where it was like 50 years ago.
Thank you. That was wonderful.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Good. Thank you all.